The desert is silent beneath the full moon, the endless dunes stretching like a vast ocean of sand. A lone traveler trudges forward, his lantern flickering against the howling wind. He had heard the stories of an ancient demon whose presence rode the storm, whose gaze never faded, even after millennia. But he had dismissed them as myths. Until now. He stumbles upon something immense beneath the sand. Stone fingers, curled like claws, reaching from the earth. He brushes away the dust, revealing a face twisted in a monstrous grin. Pazuzu. A sudden gust of wind rises, fierce and unnatural. The traveler shields his eyes, but when he looks back, the statue's hollow gaze seems to have shifted, locking onto him. The air crackles with unseen energy, a low, guttural whisper riding the storm. His heart pounds. He steps back, but the sand beneath him trembles, as if something beneath the earth is waking. The wind howls, shrieking like 1,000 voices crying out from the abyss. The traveler stumbles away, his lantern snuffed out in an instant. He turns to run, but in the shifting sands, Pazuzu's statue remains motionless, watching, waiting, listening.
Before the gods of Babylon ruled the heavens, before the scribes of Sumer etched their stories onto clay tablets, there was something older, something darker. A force that did not build cities or shape empires, but instead rode the winds of destruction, spreading sickness, famine, and madness. To the ancient Mesopotamians, the world was a fragile balance of order and chaos. And when the balance tipped, when the air turned dry and the crops withered, when the sky darkened with a storm that carried death, there was only one name whispered in terror. Pazuzu, the demon king of the wind. Demon or protector, curse or salvation? The truth lies buried in the dust of history, waiting to be uncovered. This is the story of Pazuzu, the fearsome king of demons whose name still echoes through time. Long before the rise of great empires, when early civilizations carved their beliefs into clay tablets and whispered prayers to unseen forces, the people of Mesopotamia feared the winds. The winds were not merely air and motion. They carried whispers from the divine, omens of fortune or disaster. And among these, none was more feared than the scorching southwest wind, a force of nature that came howling from the deserts, bringing suffering in its wake. This was the domain of Pazuzu. Pazuzu's origins are as ancient as Mesopotamia itself, spanning the civilizations of Sumer, Akkad, Babylon, and Assyria. Unlike the demons that lurked in the underworld, Pazuzu was not confined to the shadows of the netherworld. He ruled the skies. He was the very breath of chaos, a primal force that carried drought, famine, and disease. His form was grotesque and unmistakable, a hybrid of beasts and nightmares, with the head of a snarling lion or dog, bulging, piercing eyes that never blinked, a body both human and monstrous, and clawed talons like a bird of prey. His feet were that of an eagle, his tail a writhing serpent, and his vast wings spread wide, ready to unleash his fury upon the world. Yet Pazuzu was more than just a bringer of ruin. In Akkadian inscriptions, he introduces himself with chilling certainty. I am Pazuzu, son of Hunbi, king of the evil spirits of the air that emerge from the mountains and the deserts. I am the one who brings the storm. The people of Mesopotamia understood that to call upon a demon was to gamble with forces beyond mortal comprehension. Pazuzu was no exception. Though his power could shield against the horrors of Lamashtu and other dark spirits, it came with a terrible risk. The ancients knew that to invoke his name too often, or without the proper respect, was to invite his gaze, and once he set his sights upon a soul, there was no turning back. It was said that Pazuzu's presence was carried by the wind itself, an unseen force that slipped through the cracks of temple walls and the doorways of homes. He did not announce his arrival with great fanfare, nor did he require the rituals of human worship. Instead, he traveled on the shifting currents of the air, whispering to those who listened, planting thoughts in their minds, thoughts of despair, madness, and destruction. Rulers and priests alike feared his voice, for it was known that his influence could turn kings into tyrants, making them see treachery where there was none. There were stories passed down through generations, warnings of what happened when one sought Pazuzu's aid without caution. It was said that in the city of Sipar, a desperate noblewoman, unable to bear children, pleaded to the demon for protection against Lamashtu. She offered incense, precious oils, and even the blood of a ram upon an altar marked with his name. For a time, her prayer seemed answered, and she conceived a son. But on the night of his birth, a violent wind howled through the streets, tearing the rooftops from homes and snapping trees like brittle twigs. When the storm passed, the noblewoman was found lying lifeless, her infant missing, the cradle overturned. No thief had entered, no animal had taken the child. The villagers whispered that Pazuzu himself had come to claim what was his. Elsewhere, in the desert beyond Nineveh, travelers spoke of a merchant caravan that vanished without a trace. The night before their disappearance, the wind had turned thick and suffocating, the air heavy with the stench of decay. The camels grew restless, refusing to move forward, and the men awoke in a fevered panic, their eyes wide with terror. When dawn arrived, the only thing left of the caravan was an abandoned fire pit, its embers still smoldering. Not a single footprint or body remained. The desert swallowed them whole, as if they had never existed. Even entire villages were said to have fallen victim to the curse of the demon wind. The elders of a small settlement near the banks of the Tigris spoke of a time when their people foolishly defied the warnings. A drought had ravaged their lands for months, and in desperation, the village priest led a ritual calling upon Pazuzu to bring rain. That night, the wind began to rise. At first, it was nothing more than a whisper, a distant rustling in the palms. But by midnight, it had become a furious storm. The sky turned black, the air choked with dust, and a deafening howl swept through the village like the wail of the damned. When the storm finally ceased, the sun rose upon a barren wasteland. Where once stood homes, now lay only rubble. Where once laughter had filled the streets, now there was only silence. Pazuzu had answered their plea, but not in the way they had hoped. Those who survived these tales never spoke his name lightly again. To ask for Pazuzu's help was to stand at the edge of a great abyss, never knowing whether one would be pulled back to safety or cast into darkness. He was not a god who bestowed blessings, nor a demon easily controlled. He was a force, unpredictable, merciless, and always watching. And when the wind howled through the land, it was a reminder to all that Pazuzu was near, waiting, deciding whether to pass in silence or to take his due. The presence of Pazuzu loomed over every aspect of Mesopotamian life, woven into the fabric of daily existence, religion, and superstition. He was not merely a whispered warning in the dead of night. His image was etched into the very walls of homes, temples, and burial sites, a testament to both fear and reverence. Pazuzu's grotesque form, with its bulging eyes, snarling maw, and outstretched wings, was not an artistic exaggeration. It was a deliberate choice, meant to strike fear into the hearts of malevolent spirits. Ancient artisans carved his image onto small amulets, which were worn as protective talismans by those seeking to guard themselves against unseen forces. Pregnant women, in particular, carried these charms to ward off Lamashtu, the demoness of infant mortality, who was believed to snatch newborns from their cribs. These amulets often depicted Pazuzu standing tall, one hand raised in warning, as if to declare dominion over the dark forces lurking in the shadows. But his influence extended beyond personal protection. Larger statues of Pazuzu were placed at the entrances of homes and temples, facing outward to repel evil spirits that might try to enter. These statues, often buried beneath doorways or set atop walls, served as silent guardians, reminders that while Pazuzu himself was a fearsome entity, his wrath could be turned against even darker threats. Mesopotamian priests, the intermediaries between mortals and the supernatural, frequently invoked Pazuzu in ritual exorcisms. While other demons were banished and cast away, Pazuzu was sometimes called forth, his power harnessed to drive out lesser spirits that plagued the afflicted. Clay tablets from the time described intricate rites where the possessed were surrounded by sacred inscriptions, their bodies anointed with oil as the priests chanted incantations invoking Pazuzu's name to purge them of unclean forces. These rituals were not taken lightly. Calling upon Pazuzu required absolute precision, for if mishandled, the demon could turn his gaze upon the summoner instead. Even in death, Pazuzu's presence was acknowledged. Archaeological discoveries have unearthed burial sites where figurines of the demon were placed among the grave goods, possibly as protection for the departed in the afterlife. Some scholars speculate that his role extended beyond the earthly realm, standing as a guardian against the horrors that awaited in the underworld. The fear and fascination surrounding Pazuzu endured for centuries, his image carved onto stone and inscribed into the cuneiform records of Babylonian and Assyrian scribes. Unlike many figures of mythology who faded with time, Pazuzu's legacy persisted, his grotesque visage surviving in relics that continue to surface in modern excavations. To this day, museums around the world display these artifacts, amulets, statues, and inscriptions bearing his name, each one a chilling reminder of the power he once held. Though millennia have passed since the height of his reign, his influence lingers, an eerie testament to the deep and abiding fear that once gripped the ancient world. Even now, when the wind rises suddenly and howls through the night, there are those who remember his name and shudder. Though the mighty empires of Sumer, Akkad, Babylon, and Assyria have long since fallen, their gods and demons have not been entirely forgotten. Among them, Pazuzu remains one of the most infamous, his grotesque visage and terrifying legend transcending the boundaries of time, resurfacing in modern culture in ways both direct and unexpected. His name, once whispered in fear among the people of Mesopotamia, has now become a symbol of supernatural horror, cemented in popular imagination through literature, archaeology, and film. The resurgence of Pazuzu's legend in modern times owes much to the world of horror cinema. His most famous appearance came in the 1973 film The Exorcist, where his name became synonymous with demonic possession and unrelenting terror. Though the film took creative liberties, the eerie depiction of an ancient evil resurfacing in modern times resonated with audiences worldwide. The statue of Pazuzu, discovered in the prologue of the film's storyline, was not simply a work of fiction. It was inspired by real artifacts unearthed from the ruins of Mesopotamian civilization. Many viewers were unaware that this nightmarish figure, depicted as the force behind Regan MacNeil's possession, was drawn from a real and ancient entity that had instilled fear for thousands of years. But Pazuzu's presence in the modern world is not confined to cinema alone. Archaeological discoveries continue to bring forth evidence of his lingering influence. Statues, amulets, and inscriptions depicting the demon are still unearthed in the ruins of Mesopotamian temples and homes, providing insight into how deeply his legend was embedded in daily life. Museums across the globe, from the Louvre in Paris to the British Museum in London, house artifacts bearing his image, allowing modern audiences to come face to face with a demon once invoked for both fear and protection. The academic world, too, has not forgotten Pazuzu. Scholars of ancient Mesopotamian religion have studied his paradoxical nature, how a demon associated with destruction was also called upon for protection. His role in exorcism rituals, his connection to disease and misfortune, and his opposition to the dreaded Lamashtu continue to be topics of research, shedding light on the complex and often contradictory spiritual beliefs of the ancient world. Beyond history and academia, Pazuzu has also infiltrated the realm of popular culture in unexpected ways. His name and imagery have appeared in graphic novels, video games, and even music, further embedding him into the modern consciousness. From references in television shows to eerie reinterpretations in contemporary horror literature, Pazuzu remains a figure of fascination, his terrifying legacy refusing to fade into obscurity. Yet, beneath all the layers of cinematic horror and pop culture references, one truth remains chillingly clear. Pazuzu was not a mere fabrication of Hollywood. He was real to the people of Mesopotamia, a force of nature they both feared and revered, a demon whose presence was felt in the scorching winds and the howls of the storm. While the modern world may have reimagined him as a symbol of fictional terror, for the ancients, Pazuzu was a presence as real as the land beneath their feet and the sky above their heads. Even now, when the winds shift unexpectedly, carrying with them an eerie stillness before the storm, there are those who might wonder, has the demon wind returned? Is Pazuzu merely a relic of ancient mythology, a fragment of a long-lost civilization buried beneath the sands of time? Or does his presence linger still, woven into the fabric of the unseen, riding the winds just as he did thousands of years ago? Though the world has changed, the echoes of Pazuzu's legend have not faded. His statues remain, their grotesque forms still holding the same eerie power they did in ancient Mesopotamia. His name is still spoken, whether in hushed tones by scholars who study his history, by horror enthusiasts who recognize him from cinema, or by those who still believe in the old ways, fearing the wrath of the demon wind. Even now, the landscapes of his origin, the vast Mesopotamian plains, the ruins of ancient cities, the desolate deserts, are not entirely silent. The winds still rise, stirring the dust of forgotten empires, howling through crumbling ziggurats and abandoned temples. Superstitious whispers claim that when the air grows dry and oppressive, when an unnatural stillness precedes a sudden storm, it is a sign that Pazuzu is near. Some believe that his influence never truly vanished, that the same spirit that tormented and protected the ancients may yet respond to those who dare to invoke him. His paradoxical nature, both destroyer and guardian, tormentor and protector, ensures that he remains a subject of fascination, an entity neither fully understood nor easily dismissed. Is he just another piece of mythology, his power lost to history? Or is he merely waiting, biding his time until he is once again needed, or worse, unleashed? Perhaps in the end, some entities are never truly forgotten. They do not fade, they do not die. They wait, watching from the shadows of time, listening to the whispers of the wind, ready to rise once more when the world has need of them. And when the dry winds howl through the ruins of Mesopotamia, carrying with them an ancient, restless presence, some say he is still there, watching, waiting, listening.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.